Doom doom doo 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 doo. X-Men, 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 X. Oh my God, it's X-Men. Look out for the X-Men. But who are these X-Men? Cyclops. In the woods, Wolverine punches you sight unseen. Rogue should be quarantined. Storm. Beast reads a book and he'll jump at you, look like a rabbit, and Gambit can take what he took and explode it like fireworks up in the sky. Jubilee! Jean Grey uses her brain. Professor X does the same. They kind of share a lame robots. Careful, that fence is claws. Please don't hold your applause. X-Men fight for a cause. Robots. Flip for these heroes who fight the oppressor. Magneto's amigos all hate the professor, whose students are mutants and running and fighting again. Watch them combine and then X-Men. Yeah.
Nice. That was the dulcet tones of Shoff that you just heard.
Yeah.
I am Vactor, and we are here to talk X-Men 97, the first 2 episodes. Man, Shoff, that was a fantastic rendition of the X-Men theme song. Where did you get those lyrics from, Shoff? Ooh, those were cooking.
So yeah, well, back in 2019, I saw this article and it was talking about how the creator of BoJack Horseman, I believe his name is like Raphael Bob Waksberg or however you pronounce it. But anyway, he loved X-Men, the animated series, and he took it upon himself on Twitter back in the day to, and essentially he was like saying, when I was a kid, I made up lyrics to the X-Men theme song, and these are my lyrics. And he sang it while watching the X-Men intro. And I remember this video vividly because I was like, oh my God, these lyrics are awesome. But then he left Twitter, deleted everything. The video went with it, and it is nowhere. Like, it is so hard to find on in the internet now at this point, because it was just in one spot. It was like on a Vimeo or something that he did. So I searched high and low. I had it saved on my computer, but I couldn't get into my MacBook. But then I remembered that I had transcribed the lyrics on my phone in like an Apple Note. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm so glad I could share the lyrics, the unofficial lyrics of X-Men, the animated series. Cue the music, Tim says. And Allison, good to see you as well. Welcome.
And I gotta say, real quick, Allison has been doing some pretty cool comic book related stuff over on the Allison Troy Retro Toy Princess channel. So check it out if you haven't. Pretty good stuff going on over there. But Shoff, I can't wait to talk X-Men 97 with you. This is something that we have been quietly anticipating for quite a while. I'm sure the viewers have been anticipating as well. So I really wanted to get your X-Men original animated series take. Like, when you hear that music in your mind, Shoff, what in your mind, Jubblies, what starts happening? What wheels start turning? What do you think when you hear that?
Oh God. Well, it's absolutely my most favorite cartoon of the 90s. I was born in 83, and this show was like the show. When I was watching Spider-Man, the animated series, I was watching X-Men, I was watching Batman, the animated series, and Superman. All of those 4, that was like it. There was nothing better on television at that time. And honestly, to this day, those cartoons hold up as some of the best superhero cartoons of all time.
100%. They just don't make them like that anymore, Shoff. Man, I wish we could get some more stuff like that. All of those series are fantastic. I'm very similar to you. I was born in 82, also in April, same as you.
Oh my gosh, you're so old.
And X-Men was, I remember, like a pivotal moment for me, because it was like, hey, this is a comic book show on television. And I remember having the VHS tapes of the premiere of the pilot episode. For some reason, Pizza Hut had a promotion going on, and they were giving away X-Men. If you bought a pizza, you got these X-Men tapes.
Sounds like a deal to me.
These black and gold VHS boxes, and I wore those VHS tapes out, Shoff. I watched those over and over again. And they were also cool because they had a Stan Lee round table. I don't know who else he was talking with. It might be on YouTube somewhere, but he's talking about his ideas and his creation of the X-Men, and a little bit of retconning. He talks about like, oh yeah, I always meant for Magneto to be Malcolm X and Professor Xavier to be Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah. I always, yeah. Now that you guys are talking about this, I always thought about
That
that.
was my plan from the start.
I don't think that was correct, but it is now taken as canon, and everybody talks about that. But man, I loved this series, and I could quote to you the pilot 100%. Actually, I was watching with my wife the other day, and I hadn't seen it in 30 years, Shoff. It had to be 30 years since I had seen this show, and I'm
I haven't
quoting it
seen one
like
of
it was
those in
yesterday.
30 years.
It was crazy. So I was a huge X-Men original fan. But what's crazy about me, Shoff, is I have this divergent path where after the first season, I moved out of the country. My dad was in the Air Force, so we moved out to Korea, South Korea, and they didn't have X-Men. They didn't have anything. And I just never caught up with it. I actually should go back and watch the other seasons. But for me, the rest of my memories are all memes of Wolverine touching Jean and Rogue's butt. You know, all these things that now we talk about. These are things
you moved to South Korea and you had to give up X-Men in favor of beef. All you could have was beef, just Korean beef.
Actually, there was a lot of good Korean beef out there. Bulgogi, one of my favorite Korean dishes. But man, it was a fantastic. We got Tim in the comments quoting Back to the Future as only Tim can do. That's one of our Back to the Future buddies. But man, I was a huge fan of the original X-Men. I was psyched when X-Men 97 got announced. So I gotta say, Shoff, these first 2 episodes were cooking.
Ooh.
I was having, first of all, the intro. They completely redid the intro. They've got new animation. They've got new characters on there,
but still shot for shot, just about shot for shot. It's great. But I noticed that they change it. They'll probably do this for every episode, but depending on what mutants are featured in that episode, they adjusted the list of names. So like, for instance, we saw Magneto in the intro of the second one. So like, I think that's pretty cool because I know that we're probably going to get Nightcrawler at some point. We'll probably see Adult Cable at some point. And I mean, God knows who else, right? Mr. Sinister is going to be involved, you know, in some point. Although he's not part of the X-Men, but like,
as one of the villains, like
yeah,
they have
like
that villain
I feel like
that's running at the heroes.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're going to get some really cool intros of other characters that are part of the X-Men team that maybe are just in later episodes too. So it's really cool.
Man. Oh, and we got to say, this is going to be full spoilers. If you haven't watched it, it's great. Go watch X-Men 97. It's on Disney Plus right now. At LeBron James, it's on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
you were asking.
Have you heard of a search engine before? Go to Google.
I was having a great time, Shoff, as I was watching this opening episode. And the first thing that stood out to me, I got to say, the first episode, To Me, My X-Men, the first thing that stood out to me was the animation and just the difference between 1990s animation. And not only that, not just 1990s animation, but a lower budget 1990s animation. Because if you compare Batman the Animated Series to what X-Men was doing, it's like night and day for the frame rate, the smoothness. Like there's just way more detail in Batman the Animated Series. And that was because the budget was so much higher. So now seeing X-Men 97, number one, 30, 40 years in the future, and then also giving it a proper budget, it looks chef's kiss.
It looks excellent. It looks excellent. I know a lot of people are bothered by the fact that it's not hand drawn, but I don't mind. Like it still feels like the same show. It feels like the spiritual successor of the animated series of the 90s. And I know I've read in multiple articles that they had to purposely kind of dial back some of the technology when they were making this revival show so that it did sort of feel like it was a part of and meant to be the sequel series of the 90s show.
And that's
without
why they
looking too modern, because like it's so easy to go too modern. So
I saw that. That's why they called it X-Men 97, because it picks up right after 96 when the 5th season of the original aired. But they also put like a filter on it to make it look more grainy, more like cinematic, and more like that 90s show. And Tim brings up a very good point. I forgot I was going to mention this as well. That Marvel Animation logo that comes up now versus all the MCU stuff had Marvel Studios. Now it's Marvel Animation. I was like, "Oh, are they going to start actually giving Marvel Animation its own set, in the its own place in the Marvel universe in this MCU?" That made me happy, Shaw. That made me happy in pants because Marvel used to be so good at animation. There was a time in the late 2000s, 2010s where they were putting out animated movies alongside DC. They were putting out a Hulk versus Wolverine, Hulk versus Thor. There was another Thor movie that they did, but it was like, man, these are really great. And then they just stopped. They just gave up and just let DC continue on to do like 30 more animated movies. But I'm happy. I know Shaw is not the biggest animation fan, but this had to make you happy, Shaw, to see that Marvel Animation logo come up there.
I've been eagerly anticipating this show for quite some time, and as soon as I heard it was going to happen, I remember just jumping for joy. There are a few shows that bring me as much happiness and as much joy as this one does. It's kind of hard to see, but off on the side here are all. I'll grab one. It's
Ooh,
this is the
nice.
cell shaded versions of the X-Men lineup from the Marvel Legends.
Nice.
And they're all in like VHS cassette tape boxes, which is so cool because that's obviously what we had back then, right? So, but I have the entire wave. It's got Cyclops and Jean Grey, Jubilee, Wolverine, Storm, Morph, Mystique, and Mr. Sinister. And I certainly hope that they come back and do the rest of them and we get like Gambit and everyone else. So,
oh, man. And what I love about this show, Shoff, and that what you just showed, the merchandising and things, it's so 90s. The costumes, the hairstyles, this is so 90s. And this was the time period that you and I grew up in.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we were born in the 80s. I remember always telling people, "Oh yeah, I'm a kid of the 80s," but it's like I only really spent 8 years in that decade, and I didn't really most of those years I was babbling and spitting up. I didn't know what was
didn't
going
know
on.
English yet.
And that was the late 80s. But when the 90s came around, Shop, that was when you and I think, really got our footing.
Yeah.
Like most of our core memories of our childhoods come from the 90s. So this X-Men 97 is hitting right in our sweet spot.
Yeah. I don't even think I
lives.
remember anything before X-Men, the animated series in 92 or whatever it was, right? I think I was just born in 92, even though I was born
That
in
makes
83.
sense. Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
The clothes. Yeah.
Yes.
80s and 90s
Everything
fashion.
90s. Ooh, Jubilee dancing in the rave Shoff. There was a great 90s moment in this episode. So yeah, let's get into the episode, Shaw. The first episode, To Me, My X-Men. What were your initial thoughts when you were watching this?
It was great. You know, I think what surprised me a little bit was how much I enjoyed Cyclops because across both episodes, but definitely in the first episode too, because I always kind of all the characters in the lineup, Cyclops always kind of bugged me because he was sort of like the Leonardo of the group, where he's a rule follower, kind of a suck up, a bit of a brown noser to, Professor X. And it just, I never thought he was very cool. Like, he is cool, obviously, but like he was always like, I always like Wolverine better or Gambit better or Beast. Like anybody was better than Cyclops when I was a kid. When my brother and I would play with action figures, if one of us got stuck with Cyclops, man, we were just upset about it. It's like, oh man, well, he's going to be the first one to get killed. So
it's funny. Tim and I actually were talking before the show, and I actually texted him and I said, I really like what they did with Cyclops in here because when he was in the original series, and if you think about Cyclops in the Bryan Singer X-Men, like the original live action movies, a lot of people dumped on Cyclops as, oh, he's a Boy Scout, he's goody two shoes, kind of like the similarities between Superman and Captain America. Like those are those characters that they do good no matter what, right? And so there's a certain side of that is inspirational, but then there's also that side of, oh, maybe they're too clean cut, maybe they're too much, and they don't have like a little bit of a jagged edge like Wolverine does. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because this show, I think, is going to make a whole lot of Cyclops fans because even though he does still have that Boy Scout mentality that we see in this, he is cool. This version of Cyclops is very cool.
And very
Even if
confident too. Like
yes, right,
very confident.
100%.
And he uses his abilities in a way that we've never seen before. That is so cool. Like he's using his beam, his blast to actually maneuver across like the floor, like to quickly dodge, um, or like rearrange himself, or even when he's in a free fall in the second episode, and he manages to slow down his descent so that he can land, and then it's when he has that classic "To me, my X-Men." Maybe that's the
Yeah.
first episode. I can't remember.
Yes,
But
yes. First
but
one.
that was so freaking epic. I loved it. I loved it, and I was like, you know what? He's actually cool. Cyclops is cool now. This is great.
I loved it. I love the way that they use his powers, like you said, and showing like the concussive blast
Mhm.
of firing people around, moving himself, and and also the memes that are coming out of these. This morning, I was looking at somebody posted that clip when he was like landing, and they were like, "Wouldn't his neck
Oh
hurt
yeah, I saw
after
that
that?"
too.
And
I saw that
people were
too.
like, "All right, Cyclops in the gym doing neck workouts." It was great. There's a ton of stuff that's
I
coming
don't
out
care
there.
about that's so dumb that people are making a big thing. But I also love like the glint, like the gleam that would
Yes,
happen. Like
yes,
there would be all
mhm,
these moments where it'd be like ching, like and you'd
yes,
see like that red. Oh, so cool.
yeah, and there was that one moment when you saw his eyes through the visor, and they showed a specific like, you could actually see his retinas, his eyes, so that was I like the way that they're doing this, but, man, they are doing some fantastic stuff with the usage of their powers. Also, I gotta give a shout out to Storm, the way that she is an
Yes.
Omega level mutant, and they called it out, and
And
Cyclops was
they
like
demonstrated her the sheer scope of her powers.
yes.
Like we've never seen her do as much damage like she did against all
Yeah,
those sentinels, the zombie sentinels, which is kind of what I was like.
yeah. Nothing in live action, nothing in animation, I don't think like I said, I missed some of those later episodes or seasons, but I don't think that they've used her to her full extent. That's how she is in the comics. That's the whole purpose of having an Omega level mutant is to be like, "Look, this is the top power level, like, this is the top class of mutation." So, I really like the way that they did that, and Cyclops had another cool moment of I don't what was the line? He was like, "Turn the weather on," or something like,
Oh,
"Make it
give them
rain."
the forecast or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so and they've got these '90s quotes in here, like, "Not," like these '90s catchphrases, which I had completely forgot that was a whole thing in the
This
'90s,
shirt is
"Nah."
not the black.
But, man, I was having a
Morph
ton
was
of
also a
fun.
really cool standout
Yes,
character
they
because
raised him up,
well, here's the part
100%.
that I don't remember from the original series, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember when he would actually like take on the appearance of other people, whether it be mutants or just him like pretending to be a security guard or something like that. It was just body and voice. Like I don't remember it ever being the abilities as
Right.
well. But
Yeah.
in this, and I kind of love this because it's a great way for them to throw in cameos of a bunch of other characters that might not show up in the season on their own just based on the storyline. But like at various times, he's turned into within these two episodes, he turns into the Blob. He turns into Psylocke, Lady Deathstrike, uh, Archangel,
Angel.
Colossus, and but he also gets their power abilities in that moment too, which is insane. That is OP. And uh when he uses that properly, like switching back and forth, oh my gosh, that is a crucial person to any team.
Oh, yeah.
Um
I wanna see what they do with that, if there's, like, gonna be a specific storyline about Morph and his powers, because he was a huge part of that opening pilot of the original. Then he
yeah.
got killed off, then he came back later, but he was never, like, a huge part of the show,
Yeah.
and I also like that they're using his Age of Apocalypse head where it's like a white
Mhm.
morphed head instead of just, "Alright, here's a guy with hair," which they used in the original one, but they've done a ton of great stuff with all of these character designs, and your favorite character, Shaw, Gambit, he
Yes.
got, a nice little, couple moments here in these first 2 episodes. And
he
I think
definitely was not a focus of these episodes, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with him over the rest of the season. But it was great to see him. A lot of people were taking issue with him in the crop top, in his like casual clothes. And I saw this extremely funny TikTok video talking about that and basically just making fun of fans because he was saying that Gambit has always been like a bisexual icon. I was laughing so hard. He's like, he's wearing these huge platform boots and whatnot. He's like, his power is that he turns things pink and they explode. He's like, this guy is totally bi.
Yeah.
None of the girls, the gays, and the theys are hating the half shirt. We're living for it. Yeah. I loved it too. I was like, he looks cool. He looks cool no matter what he does. Gambit is the essence of cool, in my opinion, and I'm here for it. And yeah, if that makes me buy, then I guess
I gotta say, they set up this love triangle between Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit very nicely, Shuff. There's something
they did
that we haven't seen with Rogue where she had this whole history, and there's precedence for that in the comics. In the Age of Apocalypse storyline, she actually which is like an alternate timeline, she marries Magneto and has a baby with him. So there is some history in the comics between Magneto and Rogue, and the fact that she can touch him, that's the only mutant that she can touch. And I really like that scene with Gambit where he drops the card. I was like, oh man, this is getting juicy. This is some drama right here. So I can't wait to see what's going on here. Tim not enjoying the
he thinks it's creepy. is it an age thing? Is that where the creep factor comes from?
That might be. Hey, silver-haired foxes need love too, Tim. Right. They got to have some love for Magneto, man. But yeah, just there's so much that these first 2 episodes set up, that love triangle being one of them, just one of the storylines that they set up in here. And the rest of this season, man, I think we're in good hands, Shoff. Like
oh yeah. I mean, competence. Rogue is probably into Magneto because he's got a magnetic personality. A lot of it's great. The Cyclops Jean Grey stuff is awesome. At the end of the second episode, first of all, we find out she's pregnant in the first episode. We find out in the second episode after she has the most rushed and unrealistic birth of her son ever,
which is funny because Tim brings up in the comments, they showed her taking the doctor's abilities.
Oh yeah, that's weird.
I didn't know if that was something from the comics. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, where she touches a human and she takes their memories and their abilities or skills. Not that I was like mad about that, but I was just like, I don't remember that being a thing. I may be wrong. I'm not an X-Men expert.
I will accept it because remember there was a situation in the series where she had taken like Captain Marvel's powers, like Carol Danvers.
Yes.
She took like her memories or something like that. It was a whole thing. So like I can accept that. That's okay for me. The hurdle I'm having a tough time like mentally jumping over is the idea that Jean Grey has not had any prenatal appointments or any like designated doctor or midwife or anything while she's been pregnant this entire time. Like you got to assume that there was at least one mutant friendly doctor that she's been seeing regularly for appointments, right?
They've got to have something because what
go to that doctor.
What Magneto said in this episode or in one of the episodes, he's like, Charles had all this money and he was wasting it. Yeah, he wasn't giving his workers health care. He was not giving Jean.
She hasn't taken any prenatal vitamins. She didn't get any ultrasound. She doesn't know if this baby is like deformed or whatnot. Like it's
yeah. I think that was...
I will die on this hill. Okay. It was nuts to me. And it was very much Hollywood in the way that the baby was going to come in like 5 seconds. Like she's like, oh God, the baby's here. And it's like popping out. I'm like, first of all, for those of us that are dads and know the process, it is not immediate. And if it is, you waited too long to go to the hospital in the first place, because there are plenty of signs way ahead of time. My wife's first pregnancy, it was a 13-hour experience. Second one was 3.5, 4 hours. It wasn't 15 minutes. This baby's coming. All right.
I did love that scene of Wolverine sweating as he's driving her to the doctor, and he's like, and it's like, get out of the way.
Yeah, she's
that
using
whole
her powers
scene.
to pick up people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that
was a
crazy
fantastic scene.
That like, I know the whole thing is about superhuman people with mutant genes, and they're all they all got superpowers. But the most unbelievable aspect of it was that whole sequence involving her pregnancy and labor experience to give birth to Nathan Summers, aka Future Cable. So we got baby Cable here. Yes, which also brings up a whole nother storyline from the comics that is really exciting, because the mother of Nathan Summers is actually Madeline Pryor, who is a Jean Grey clone and doesn't know it. So, well, they said Nathan, and they said Nathan Summers, Tim. So yeah, Madeline Frelin. Yeah, you're right. It could go that way, but I feel like they're going to go the Cable route. That's just my
I think it's going to be Cable too, just the way that everything seems to be tying in,
especially since we're getting the a duplicate Jean Grey at the end of episode 2. Right. So then there's like, well, who's the real one?
Yes.
So,
man, and this is what I was saying. Like, there was so much great stuff set up at the end of these episodes. It's like you want to know what's going to happen. These are great nail biting, edge of your seat cliffhangers. Like, whoa, there's a because if I was gonna say, if you know the comics, then it's one thing, and then if you don't know the comics, like both of them, you are still like, this is a great cliffhanger.
Yeah, and you know, you've got that, then you've got the whole Storm situation, right? With
she loses her powers.
She loses her powers from X. By the way, bone to pick here. It is not Executioner. You want it to be Executioner. He thinks he can call himself Executioner, but the way he spells his name, it is Executioner, which is dumb.
It was the 90s, Shaw. The 90s.
I won't accept it. You can't just add letters in that don't exist in the word and then call it that. He's Executioner, and I will call him that for the rest of our recordings. And if anyone says it's Executioner, I will say, you're wrong. You're wrong. But anyways, he shoots her accidentally. He's going for Magneto, aiming for Magneto. She loses her powers. In the comics, I was reading about this. That sets up a whole life-death storyline. And she ends up connecting with Forge, believe it or not. And Forge is another X-Men character. And we find out that Forge is the one who actually built this gun that takes away the powers. Ooh. And so she has a whole thing with him. But eventually down the road, if things go the same way, Forge is also the one who helps her get her powers back. So, and Forge is a great character from the animated series as well. He's his powers are tech related, if I'm not mistaken. He like can build anything.
Anything. Yes. He is a technopath, and
yes, that's right.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff if we get to see some. I mean, there's so many great characters that they can introduce in this series.
In the mutant vernacular, X is pronounced both X like normies and Exa. The more
you know. Yeah, there's some great stuff here, man. Shaw. I did want to talk about, because you may not know this, Shaw is a seasoned voice actor. I wanted to get your take on the voice acting in this show, because we have a lot of original voice actors coming back 30 years later. And then we also have some new people coming in. So what were your thoughts on the voice acting talent, Shaw?
I loved the returning voices, especially Wolverine. Cal Dodd, I think is his name. Loved having him back. Beast, initially, I was kind of like, is this the same guy? Because it sounds close. It sounds like really close, but there was just like a hint of it not being him. And then I remember you talking to me separately outside of this, and you confirmed that it was the same guy. And so I was like, okay, well then it's just probably age, right? Like we've got a lot of years. As we know, voices change over the years, even from, I'm not talking like the idea of like puberty or maturity, but like your voice gets a little more gravelly as you get older too. So to go 30 years and then revoice the same character, it's going to have slightly different approach, and the cadence might be different because you're so disconnected from what you were doing day in, day out for a job that you might have lost a little bit of what the essence of the character was. And so Beast, I feel like, is close and sounds great. I love Beast. The changes that they made, I think for the most part, are okay. I did not like whoever is voicing Roberto Acosta, aka Sunspot, although they don't say that yet, but that's who that is.
We know who it is.
Yeah, I don't love that the way that that's being done, but I'm here for it. It'll be what it is. Rogue is okay. I feel like Rogue is missing a little something. I feel like Gambit is missing a little bit of something.
What's just, you know, what's funny about Rogue, real quick, the actress that plays Rogue is the original actress Lenore Zann, and she actually, Shoff, was elected to the Canadian, I don't know too much about Canadian politics, but I guess, I don't know, maybe the Senate, the Nova Scotia New Democratic Party. She was elected.
Yeah.
So she is an elected official in Canada. And then she came back to do this. So
that's like, hilarious. Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah. So like, another instance of, if she's the original, then it's age. It's age more than anything else.
100%.
I know Gambit is a different actor, because Gambit was actually voiced by, I think, 2 characters in the animated series, or 2 actors in the animated series. But this new person, I like. It just feels a little more reserved, a little more subdued, not as charming, I think, as
well, speaking of charm, Shoff, that actor AJ Locascio, and I'm butchering his name, he actually played Marty McFly in the Back to the Future game from years ago. Did a fantastic voice match for Michael J. Fox. So a little bit of Back to the Future history there.
Doc, don't we need to back up? We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
That's what I'm talking about, Shoff. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think a lot of them did a nice job, and there was just a little hint of age in there where it didn't sound 100% like the original, but it's 30 years later. That's fine. Tim points out one of my favorite voice actors, Jennifer Hale, who she is like voice acting royalty. If you look up her credits, it's a mile long. She did a lot of Disney princesses in the late 90s, early 2000s. But for Star Wars fans, she was the voice of Bastila on Knights of the Old Republic, which is one of my favorite video games. Actually, that is my favorite Star Wars story of all time, is Knights of the Old Republic. But Jennifer Hale, fantastic voice actor, and she did a great job voicing Jean Grey. The original Jean Grey actor, which I did not realize this, she plays the blonde-haired lady who and it's like, that's interesting. Why didn't they get her to come back to do Jean Grey again? But at least they're employing her to come back again.
No, I think they got Jennifer Hale is doing a great job as Jean Grey. I enjoy her voice. The actor they got to play Cyclops, because
the original
actor passed away, right? Awesome. Honestly,
great
if
job.
You didn't tell me that it was a new actor, I wouldn't even think it was. It is that good. His voice sounds just like the animated series, if not better. Like, and there's a more confident tone in his voice, but it still has the essence of the 90s show, and I love it. Like, I know that we haven't seen Mr. Sinister yet, but I know that he's being voiced by the same actor as before, which is fantastic. I thought the Magneto voice, I haven't had a chance to look it up if it was the same guy, but loving it.
It is not. It's actually Matthew Watterson. This is a new voice. The original passed away in 2020.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So really enjoying that performance. We even got Ross Marquand, who's done a ton of voice acting in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And you and I talk about he has a huge role on Invincible, which is back, Shaw. We are going to be talking in the future about Invincible season 2, part 2. So
Yeah,
stay tuned for this on this channel. We're going to be talking about that.
but
But
he
yes,
did some
continue, Ross.
Professor Xavier voice
Yes.
for that, which was really cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I'm the voice acting I think is top notch. The animation top notch. The revised and updated theme song top notch. The storyline is they used every minute effectively. There is not a moment of like a lull. It is consistently interesting, consistently like engaging, and I honestly, even though I'm glad they introduced the first two episodes at the same time, they didn't need to. The first episode stands alone and as an excellent episode. They could have just sent that one out and we would have been completely happy and completely content. Because it's not like the second episode is there so that we can appreciate it or that it meant to be viewed together. Like it's okay. Like the show is that great. One episode would have been sufficient. I'm glad we got two.
Yeah. Looks like there's going to be 10 total episodes for this season. They've already been greenlit for a second season. They're in development right now, or they're in production. And then a third season is in the kind of planned, Shaw. So that one hasn't been greenlit yet. But man, if they don't greenlit this third season, we are going to riot because we're having some great fun right now. And even with the I don't know if you saw it, Shaw, the showrunner was fired like a week before
Yeah.
this came out or 2 weeks before. We still don't know all of the details about that, but it's like kind of
Well,
shady
it's
that he was.
from what I read, it seemed like it was related to his activities on OnlyFans, which I was like, are we talking about like like he has his own OnlyFans account? Is that what we're saying? Like he's putting out
Yeah,
like foot content or something like that?
I
Like what's going on
I don't
here?
know. Yeah.
Or it's just like him interacting with models. Like that's the part I'm like, what is the deal here?
And
It's
he
so
had been posting a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, and he was answering questions on Instagram and Twitter, and he deleted them. So it's like he almost erased all of his social media presence.
ugh.
So that's another storyline that we want to keep track of as this progresses. But it seems like what he set up is fantastic. Like it seems like we are in store for a great first season. We will see how it progresses. Anything else specifically you want to mention, Shuff, about these first 2 episodes?
Just that I loved it. Yeah, I'm so excited and so jazzed to have it back. The writing of these episodes was top notch. There was one bit of wordplay that I wanted to kind of call out as just like one of my favorite moments. So obviously, we know Professor X's favorite, one of his big lines, his signature lines is "To me, my X-Men," and then we got Cyclops saying it in that first episode, "To me, my X-Men," and it sounds great. And then at the end of that first episode, when they're like, when Scott and Jean are like, well, we're gonna leave, and they're like, well, who's gonna be the leader? Like, what's gonna happen? And then of course, there's a knock at the door, or whatever, right? Or there's an intruder, right? Intruder alert. And we find that Magneto is there, and he says, out of context, he says, now everything belongs to me, my X-Men. And so he still says to me, my X-Men within that. And I'm just like, how do you do this? This is fucking genius. Oh, I just cussed. I'm so sorry. I'm like, it blew my, I'm like, this is some excellent, excellent writing. And that's why I just lost it and resorted to cuss words.
Well, if we get demonetized, Shuff, it's your fault.
We
But
can
man,
bleep
yeah,
it.
I had a great time with these first 2 episodes. I'm really looking forward to the next ones. Fire Made Flesh is the episode next week. So we're going to check that out. We will be back to talk about it next week. Schaff and I are always going to be talking our thoughts on comic books. We're talking about Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, Schaff, X-Men. There's some fantastic stuff
There's no
in the
X-Men in
works.
that comic book, so I don't know what you're talking
Well,
about.
we can check out our episode and we can talk about that some more. But I had a great time on this one. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you next week.
Exit.